I'll go from the middle.
Just there, just in the middle.
That's from the last minute.
Aye, no worries at all. You sure that's behaving itself?
Got the jacket off a bit before too long.
I know, that's the thing, but I don't look quite as smart without my jacket.
Well, I'll put this on to pretend I'm
I know what you
somebody
mean. Yeah, do you think
in
this is well
office
to
stuff,
do
you
it?
know.
Yeah.
But it is. Yes. That's for Jonathan to sort out. I would think so.
I'll be fine. Yeah.
Right. Well, good evening. You're alive. You're alive. Welcome to this special election hustings for Inverclyde. It's. Oh, is that better? Hello. Thank you. I'll not say too much of that again, but welcome to this special election hustings for the elections that take place, as you all know, on the 7th of May. We have 4 of the 5 candidates here, which I'll introduce you to in just a minute. Regrettably, the Liberal Democrat Party contacted me just this morning to say that they were unable to send a representative. In Reform terms, Malcolm Offord, the leader of the Reform Party in Scotland, who's a candidate here, he is on television tonight in Aberdeen. So I'm going to welcome a representative from Reform as part of things. But before that, I'd like to pray. Whether you're a praying person or not, we won't pray for long, but if you would do that, that would be good. So Father, we're in your house again. We love being here because we know that you reside here. And Lord, we just pray that you will be the master of all proceedings, that the anointing of your presence will touch this room and many within it, for you are God. And so, Lord, we give this occasion to you now and ask you to bless it to us in Jesus' name. Amen. So from my left, but once I turn around, it's my right, let me introduce, first of all, Stuart McMillan. Stuart is the SNP candidate. He's a sitting member, or was. I think they were in purdah in that sense. And when I'm finished, each of the candidates will have a chance to speak for a moment or two about themselves. Next to Stuart is Moira Ramage. Moira, you're a candidate actually in Renfrewshire? Renfrewshire North and Cardonald. And Moira is here because Malcolm Offord can't be, so she's representing the Reform Party. And to my right, here we have Ted Runciman. My goodness, it's loud when I talk like this. Ted has been a candidate before in this part of the world, representing the Conservative Party. And to his right is Francesca Brennan. She has been a sitting Inverclyde Council councillor, and she's representing the Labour Party. Could you give them a really warm welcome? That is almost as good as Morton scoring a goal. So I'm going to hand over our master of proceedings now for tonight, and moderator is Jonathan Fleming, the minister here. So I'm going to ask Jonathan now to come and take over. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Good evening, everyone. Lovely to have you with us here in Lyle Kirk, and it's an honour to be here to facilitate tonight's discussions. As Chris said, in a short moment we're going to invite each of our candidates to introduce themselves briefly, but before that, just a couple of housekeeping matters. First of all, if anyone is looking for the facilities, they are through this door here, and the ladies is the first on the left, and the gents is the second door on the right. So hopefully that will be clear enough, and the signage is all there as well. We're not planning on having a fire tonight, so you'll be very pleased to hear, because the paperwork's a nightmare. If there is a fire, if we hear any fire alarms, if you please just follow the signage with the green signs for the exits. If you make your way out, towards the fire exit on the left-hand side, and down. Our assembly point is just outside the Italian Club, which is next door in number 29. And I believe that concludes all of the housekeeping for tonight. But without much further ado, it's my great pleasure to welcome all of our candidates once again. And having been introduced from Chris's left to right, I'm going to go from my right to left and invite Francesca to open in introducing ourselves to you, and then everyone after that. Francesca.
Thanks very much, Jonathan, and thanks so much to Inverclyde Christian Initiative for organising this hustings here tonight, and entirely to yourselves for coming along. Now, we're never sure if the weather makes it more appealing or less appealing to leave your houses, but the fact that this room is filled up with all of you here tonight is a really, really good sign for democracy here in Inverclyde, and I really appreciate your attendance and the chance to hear us all out. So, as Chris said, my name's Francesca Brennan. I work as a local teacher and also a local councillor in the town centre in the West End of Greenock. I've met lots of people that I see around here tonight, so that's really gratifying to see you here. And I'm sure that clap that we got right at the start is probably the warmest response that any of us could wish for tonight. One of the reasons that I'm standing is because I love Inverclyde so much. I'm born here, I'm from here, it's where I'm bringing up my family, it's where I work most of my career. But I wouldn't be standing in this election if I didn't know that Inverclyde could be better and deserves better. And that's what's driven me to become Scottish Labour's candidate in this election. I've been inspired by people in my family, like my mum and dad, Martin and Veronica Brennan, local teachers, and in my dad's case, another local politician. They taught me everything I needed to know about public service, and that was what encouraged me to get involved in local politics and start trying to make that journey to serve Inverclyde as best as I could. So thanks very much for giving me the chance to introduce myself tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Francesca. Thank you, Francesca. And now to Ted Runciman, if you'd like to introduce yourself. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure to see you all that have come here to listen to us tonight. So thank you very much. I lived in Inverclyde for the first 26 years of my life before running away to the south of England, and my boss sent me down and I forgot to come back for 40 years. But I came back just 5.5 years ago, and when I looked around, I felt that something had to be done. Inverclyde needs picked up. It needs help. And my new partner turned around and said, well, do something about it. And that led me to joining the Scottish Conservative and Unionist Party. And I've stood in 3 elections so far in Inverclyde. And I'm very pleased to have been selected as the Conservative Unionist candidate for Inverclyde for this election. And certainly I'm hoping that I will be able to serve the Inverclyde area very well and help you for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. Moira, welcome. Welcome over the border to Inverclyde, and it's lovely to have you with us. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks so much. Firstly, can you all hear me? Good, good. A little bit about me, because I'm not your candidate, and then a little bit about your candidate that I've learned from him. So I'm Moira Ramage, as you've been told. I'm a solicitor. In terms of Greenock, I was a district procurator fiscal here for many years. I came here at first in the late 90s to work as a deputy fiscal. I also have given legal advice to the General Medical Council, Dental Council, Nursing Midwifery Council, and General Teaching Council for Scotland. I now just a lady of leisure. I think I'd like to say that, but that's not quite true. I do help in businesses in Glasgow. So enough about me, because I'm not your candidate. But Malcolm Offord, who is your candidate, Malcolm came from Bank Street in Greenock, from a family, I think it was 5. His mum was a nurse, his dad worked in a local authority. Now, Malcolm went off to London to get a job. He went to Edinburgh University, he got a good degree, and he went off to London to work. And he's made a success of his life. He was made a Lord in the House of Lords, and he's given all that up to come here to Greenock, where he loves, to fight hard for what needs to get done in this constituency. This constituency needs investment. It needs jobs. People need to get a job and go out to work. He's ambitious for Greenock. I'm ambitious for him to be ambitious for Greenock because my heart has a lot of good times here, the people I've worked with, the police, the social work, the doctors at Inverclyde. So Malcolm's not here to speak for himself, but I can assure you he will be a fabulous candidate, and please give him your vote. Thank you.
My job off me. Stuart, over to you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and thank you very much for the invitation to be here this evening. And some folk in the wider public think that politics is not actually catching the imagination. Well, I would actually suggest that people come to this church tonight and see the number of people who are here, because I think it does indicate that there's a huge amount of interest in politics, certainly locally, but also I'm quite sure, I know there was a particular Hustings elsewhere last week where they had to postpone it because there were so many people in the room to have that Hustings tonight. So just first of all, I obviously Stuart McMillan, the SNP candidate. I grew up in Port Glasgow, I've lived in Greenock, and I now live in Inverkip. Inverkip's been my home since 2012. I studied in Dundee, I studied in France, Germany and Sweden whilst I was during my studies. Came back in 1997 with 2 degrees, and when I came back I immediately was unemployed for 6 months. That helped shape a lot of my thinking with regards to employment and the lack of support that was available at that time. I got a job with IBM. I was a supply analyst there for 2.5 years before moving to London to work for a few years. I was first elected in 2007 as a regional MSP, twice to a regional MSP, and then twice for constituency MSP for Greenock and Inverclyde. I'm asking for your support to be the first MSP for Inverclyde in the new Parliament after this election. I've been involved in many different campaigns. Some I've led and some I've actually played a very strong part on. Just a couple of examples. If you look at the A78 and the road infrastructure that's now changed, that was one of the things I started working on way back in 2008. So it took a long time to get there. Also the project through the City Deal, something I'm really proud of and something actually has worked. Another one is the A8 and the flood prevention measures along East Hamilton Street, £2.5 million. That particular project. That was something I started working on because of the flooding problems that have been there decade after decade after decade and nothing happening. So that's happened, and that's actually working for Inverclyde. That's keeping Inverclyde moving. That's just 2 examples. There are more, which I'm sure you'll probably hear about throughout the rest of the evening. But thank you very much, everyone, once again, for your attendance tonight.
Thank you. So, one of the things which bodes very well, ladies and gentlemen, is that a couple of weeks ago I had the pleasure, I was selected to attend the debate night for the Leaders Special in Paisley Town Hall. And I don't know about you, but I personally was very disappointed in that evening because I spent the whole evening listening to character assassination after character assassination and no answers to real questions. And it's been lovely to hear everyone introduce themselves tonight without anyone talking over each other for the first 15 minutes of tonight, which is great. Thank you for joining us tonight. And with the Scottish local elections on the 7th of May approaching, this Hustings is an opportunity for you to hear directly from the candidates standing to represent Inverclyde and to help you make an informed choice. Local government plays a vital role in our day-to-day lives, from schools and social care to housing, local services and economic development. And the decisions made at council level have a real impact on our communities. Tonight is about giving candidates the chance to outline their ideas and their priorities. But it's also about giving you, the people of Inverclyde, a clearer sense of who they are, what they stand for, and how they would represent you. We'll be covering a range of important topics, and I'll be asking each candidate to keep their answers reasonably concise, so we can hear from everybody fairly. I may step in from time to time to keep us on track and on time, and we ask that everyone, candidates and audience alike, please keep our discussion respectful, even when there are strong differences of opinion. But for now, let's get into tonight's hustings. Our first question is about improving Inverclyde. Now, Inverclyde, as we know, is a place with strong community and real potential. But many residents still face challenges around jobs, health, and opportunities. People here want to see meaningful change, not just promises. So our first question for each of our candidates tonight is, what are your priorities for improving Inverclyde? Francesca.
Thanks very much, Jonathan. Of course, I think the main reason we would all be standing in this election is entirely about improving Inverclyde. As Jonathan says, we know there are so many wonderful things about our area, our people, our schools, our scenery, our waterfront, our transport links to other places. But we also know that our area can be so much better. And after 19 years of the SNP in government, if they had the answers to improve Inverclyde with real meaning for change, then we would probably have heard them by now. So my priorities for improving Inverclyde won't come as a huge surprise to anybody here who was listening when I said I work now as a teacher, currently in Drumchapel, for children with ASN, and I come from a background in improving young people's literacy as a family librarian. So education and skills are key to my priorities. It's only through education and skills, supporting apprenticeships, increasing apprenticeships, supporting our college and further education sector, that we're really going to see any change here in Inverclyde when it comes to increasing jobs and opportunities. And that's the only way we're really going to get the sustained economic development to lift people out of poverty here in Inverclyde. But that's not my only priority. A big thing for me is saving our town centres. Our town centre vacancy rate is currently very high and up on last year, and that's something that I want to see turn around. I know how important town centres are to the people who live in Inverclyde, because I speak to so many people every week, not just during this campaign, but in my role as a councillor as well. I also want to see improvement on building homes. We've heard from other people say housing associations here locally refuse to build, and then a kind of complacency sets in around that. That's not good enough for me, and it's not good enough for my party, Scottish Labour. We want to see that change with increasing mid-market rental homes in Inverclyde and seeing people being able to live in homes of choice. I also, for Inverclyde, want to see us building our belief in ourselves and our own capacity. We need to be the ones singing and shouting about how great Inverclyde is. And we need to do that to restore some hope in the area so that we don't allow the politics of hate or division to thrive. And that's something that concerns me, and I think should concern us all. But importantly, it's always going to be about health too. If we're electing a Scottish Labour government, and with me elected as your new MSP, not someone who's been doing the job for 20 years, then improving health and fixing the NHS will be my top priority and my defining mission. And finally, I want to talk about tackling crime in our area, because a big part of that is key to some of the other parts, like our town centres thriving, people feeling that they can get out and about. And we have seen crime rise, especially when it comes to something like shoplifting that stops our town centres thriving, acquisitive crime, and antisocial behaviour, which we know makes people feel unsafe and uncomfortable in the homes where they want to live and they want to be bringing up their families. So they're the main things. I could go into a lot more detail, and I hope I'll get the chance later on about how we will improve health, how we will fix the NHS, and how we've got really, really clear, practical ways to get the basics right when it comes to crime and policing. But I don't want to take up too much of your time in this answer, but I will elaborate on that later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Francesca. Ted, same question.
Thank you very much. My priorities for Inverclyde certainly is improving the NHS. My father was a doctor, and he spent his whole career within the NHS. And when I returned here 5 years ago, I was requiring an operation for my knee. So I went on the wait list at Inverclyde Royal Hospital. Well, between the 3 years I waited at Basingstoke, they added another 2 years here, So I waited 5 years for my first knee replacement. And this made me believe that, what are the NHS services in Inverclyde? They are sadly lacking support. Inverclyde Royal Hospital has got waiting lists, it's got backlogs in operations, etc. And also, when it comes to getting a GP's appointment, how easy is it to get a GP's appointment? Certainly, unless you phone at 2 minutes to 8, hoping to get the telephone at 8, the chances are you'll be lucky if you get linked into the phone by 9 o'clock. So we need to improve access to GPs. Also, 10 years ago, the SNP talked of, we need a new hospital in Inverclyde. 10 years later, we're still waiting, and we've seen a mass of services being moved out of Inverclyde to Paisley, the Golden Jubilee, and the Queen Elizabeth in Glasgow. So where is the investment in the NHS and the hospital that Inverclyde people were told would come from the SNP? Then we look at this education. Education. I remember that someone saying, education, education, education. Measure me in that. Measure me on the attainment gap between the highest and the lowest. What have we seen? In the time I've been here, the attainment gap has just increased. We have fallen down the league tables in education, in that we used to be, Scottish education used to be regarded as absolutely first class. Now we find that English education has exceeded us. English education, I believe, is now ranked in Europe at about 13. Where are we? We're down in the 30s and 40s. So we must look at improving the education. We must look at the different subjects, particularly STEM, science, technology, engineering. We must look at those because this area has got a big background of engineering and technical jobs. We need to make sure that we can rebuild that for the future. That's part of what Inverclyde needs. When I look at the services, well, I discovered that the police and fire service, I attended the fire service presentation late last year, and what we're seeing is, yes, Greenock's going to lose a fire engine, and the chances are Port Glasgow will lose a fire engine. Now, what does this mean for us? Well, it certainly means times to get key equipment to incidents is going to take a bit longer. The first one will get there, but the second one, where's it going to come from? It's going to be that little bit later. The police service. The police generally in Scotland, in some respects, have given up in that the recording of actual crime, they don't record half of the crime that's actually taking place. It's quietly forgotten about. So sometimes when we look at the crime statistics, how well we're doing, well, if we're not recording half of it, we're not getting the true figures. We also see here in Greenock, the Greenock Police Station currently requires £21 million worth of repairs. £21 million of repairs. That's going to take a long time to fix. This has been a lack of investment over the years. So we have to look at it. Transport. Yes, we have a reasonable transport system within Greenock. We have got a bus service, but when I was speaking to residents, I keep on being told we need a better service from some of the outlying areas to the Inverclyde Royal Hospital. Sometimes it's taking them 2 or 3 buses to get there. So we need to look at transport. We need to look at improving that. These are certainly 3 of my key things that I have to look at for you in the future.
Thank you, Ted. And Moira, perhaps you can share some of Malcolm's priorities for improving Inverclyde.
Thank you so much. Anything I'm saying on behalf of Malcolm, although I do share, if not all the values, most of the values, and they do apply not just to Inverclyde. But I know if Malcolm was here, the first thing that he'd be saying to you is he has a great deal of ambition for Inverclyde. He wants Inverclyde to be a wealthy, healthy place to come to and to live in and to work in. He wants investment into Inverclyde, he wants to create jobs, and he wants to get more people into work and less people on the welfare benefit state. Now, the key thing for him is being able to provide skilled workers, skilled projects for our young people, so that they have a skill that can be used in an industry, and then they've got a job, and then they'll go on in that job, and they'll get maybe further up the food chain in terms of the employment. But we're not having a situation where people are coming from school and just going on to a benefit system when they're 18. We need to be able to be ambitious for the children of Inverclyde, make sure there's good jobs available for them and that they're working. Now, the other thing, the police have been mentioned. I worked here when there was no issues about Rouen Street or there was plenty of policemen, but I've noticed that I couldn't tell you the last time I saw a traffic car. I'm down here a lot, not seen a traffic car for the police. And what's happened is that the police here have been conjoined with Paisley, Renfrewshire, and the officers that used to be here, they knew everybody, and they knew everybody that was involved in crime or on the periphery, and they could keep their eye on that, the CID and the uniformed officers. Now they seem to interchange between Inverclyde and Renfrewshire. Now, that's not good for Inverclyde. Inverclyde should have its own force that deals with Inverclyde and nowhere else, because that's the best way of keeping crime down, the best way of keeping an eye on social disorder wherever it occurs. Education has been mentioned, and I've mentioned how Malcolm would want young people to have skills, older people who maybe worked in yards to be re-skilled in order to take up jobs that are available once we've got investment into the area. And in particular, he is of a view that actually too many people now go to university. We don't all need to go to university to get an education. You can do well at school, have good teachers, get on with your subjects, have a good, healthy attitude to education in school, and then move on to become skilled at being a welder or a painter or any other skilled job like that. So people need to have skills. We need to protect our young people. So what I think he would be saying if he was here, invest in Inverclyde, deliver for the people of Inverclyde, and get people back to work and have healthy, wealthy lives. Thank you.
Over to you.
Thank you. There's a few areas that really are crucial for me. First of all is health, then you have employment, also additional support needs for the support for kids, and also the continued investment into our infrastructure. I will deal with the health first. Now, it has been touched upon with regards to the IRH. Now, despite what I have read numerous times online and also in the Greenock Telegraph, nobody has promised a new IRH. It's something I do want, and I know it's something that we would all want to see. But these things clearly are not cheap. But we have seen investment in health facilities in Inverclyde. We've got the replacement for Ramscraig, which is Orchard View. We've got the new Greenock Health Centre, which is obviously is a wonderful facility, anyone who's been into it. And with the budget that the Scottish Government announced earlier on this year, there's going to be a replacement for Port Glasgow Health Centre. So that shows investment into health facilities in Inverclyde. Now, for me, these are really important for a wide variety of reasons, but primarily because we've got an ageing population in Inverclyde. So we need to make sure we've actually got facilities that actually are going to be of assistance and fit for purpose for our population. I also mentioned the aspect about employment. Just a couple of examples of things that I have actually been involved in. So we have seen the Ardgowan distillery take place. That's something I was engaged with the folk behind that particular project for about 7 years to get that project to happen. A lot of time is spent in that, because that's jobs, that's more jobs, that's new skills coming into our community. Ferguson Marine, shipbuilding has been touched upon. Now, Ferguson's, I'm not going to stand here and say that everything that's happened at Ferguson's has been wonderful. But we cannot forget that Ferguson's in 2014 was closed. It was shut down. It was brought back into use. Scottish Government ensured that happened. Have there been problems at times? Yes, there have been. But we also know that the yard was actually going to close again in 2018. And the Scottish Government stepped in and nationalised it. Now, why is that important? Now, it's important because, first of all, it safeguarded the jobs. It also helped to maintain the opportunity for young people for more apprenticeships. And with the announcement that just took place from the Scottish Government, just before Parliament stopped, there's going to be work there for another 5 years. 4 vessels for over a 5-year period. That's safeguarding jobs and also creating more apprenticeships. Now, is that enough for me? No, it's not. But is that an opportunity of a lifetime for the management to actually get it right? Yes, it is. And one of the ways they can actually get it right is by listening to the folk on the shop floor, who actually do the work on the shop floor. Another aspect in terms of jobs is I fully support Inverclyde Council's suggestion and proposals with regards to the Kelburn Industrial Estate in Port Glasgow to expand that industrial estate. Because one of the points that's been highlighted time and time again at meetings I've been involved in is the aspect of there are businesses that want to come into Inverclyde to set up, create jobs because of that particular location. That's something I wholeheartedly support. I'm not going to stand here tonight and just do a party political rant because it's a different party that's in power in the council. That'd be futile and utter nonsense. Because that's something that will benefit Inverclyde. If it's going to create jobs, something I very much welcome. Another aspect is Inchgreen, the whole Inchgreen joint venture. Now, I know it's a bit contentious in the eyes of some. We've seen some of that obviously online over some time. If that does get it right, if that particular project does get it right, and it does then create the jobs that have been spoken about, have been highlighted for quite some time, then that will be a great thing for our community. And I will happily support that in every way, shape, because if that's going to be jobs coming into our community. These things are all underpinned by a college. College has been touched upon. So I am really pleased the fact we've got a new senior management team in our college. A college that actually now wants to work lockstep with business, because that wasn't happening before. And I know when I have been out and about in the constituency over the last number of years, I have been told by some businesses that they actually stopped sending people to the college for training because they'd lost belief in the college and what it was actually delivering. We've now got a senior management team at that college that actually wants to make sure that the college actually turns around, is working lockstep with business, and actually helps to create the opportunities that we would all want to see happen in our community for our younger people. So I will wholeheartedly support that in every way, shape. And just one other point just on jobs, and that's tourism. Not everybody fully considers tourism to be something that's actually worthwhile. But tourism is something that's hugely important for Scotland's economy. It's one of the biggest aspects of Scotland's economy. Inverclyde lags way behind in terms of that opportunity. In 2009, I set up a cross-party group in the Scottish Parliament, recreational boating and marine tourism. I don't sail, but we've got the River Clyde here. So we've actually got this wonderful natural resource that we should be utilising so much more. Now, so the cruise ships are coming in, but I've heard many, many times from small businesses locally that they're not getting the full economic benefit from the cruise ships. There's been a wide variety of obstacles put in the way in the past, But that's something that we need to try to improve. But that needs a partnership approach to make that happen. Touched upon ASN. Now, for the last couple of years, I've worked with families with regards to children with additional support needs, and I see some folk are in the room tonight. At every step of the way, I have not done party politics on this. This is an issue that's far too important for partisan politics. I was in the Education Committee for a period when we were undertaking the particular inquiry and report that was published, and last year, when I was on the Audit Committee, Audit Scotland, they produced their briefing paper and came in and did the session about additional support needs. And I think that the 5 people who were on the committee, in all fairness to all 5 different parties, there was no party politics played in this. It's far too important. So we need to get it right. We need to do more with children in our community who've got additional support needs. Excuse me. And finally, infrastructure investment. I did a Freedom of Information request to Transport Scotland. I have engaged with Amy, who currently got the contract, Transerve beforehand, and Amy beforehand again. And also engaged with Transport Scotland. Over the last 5 years, there's been over £12.5 million excuse me, spent on the A8 and A78. Now, we will all complain at times about the roadworks, but that's a lot of investment coming in to actually improve our infrastructure. I know there's more to come as well from Amy. And that's because of the level of engagement I've undertaken with them. I mean, I've actually taken Amy and Transport Scotland folk around in my car on their network to show them some of the problems and challenges. I'm the only MSP who's done it because I live in the community. I'm sick to the back teeth of the processes that I have that don't work. So I will continually push for that infrastructure investment to come in because I know it's already happening. We've got that vast amount of investment coming in. Do we want more? Yes, absolutely. But that's over £12.5 million in 5 years. So that's a positive story. Thank you.
Thank you all very much indeed. Now, in the first question, I always try and I give you a little bit of carte blanche in the time just to see how far are they going to push this. You're doing all right. If you could keep it a little bit more succinct, you would be making everyone a little bit happier. But I don't want to cut the discussion either. But you're all doing well so far. Thank you for that. So our next question is about attracting visitors, residents and businesses. Now we often hear about Inverclyde's stunning coastline and rich heritage. But attracting visitors, new residents and businesses takes more than just potential. It requires a clear and deliverable plan. So our question is, what is your vision to make Inverclyde a more appealing place to visit, to relocate to, and for businesses? And we'll go in the reverse order, and we'll start with Stuart.
Okay, thank you. First of all, excuse me, I'm on the Greenock Towns Board, and so is Francesca. I think we will all say the same thing in terms of Inverclyde and how we all feel about it and the opportunities that we feel that Inverclyde actually will have. So I think that's one point of consensus that I'm sure we can all agree on. Through the Greenock Towns Board, I put 2 suggestions forward with regards to something to look at. And thankfully, they were agreed. First one was actually on some type of kind of promotional campaign. Because I mean, Jonathan's right in terms of how we all feel about the area. And I think back to, it was one of my friends from university. He's the mayor in his village in France now, and he has been for about 12 years now. So he came to visit, it was a few years ago, and I didn't tell him at all about Lyle Hill, across the Lorraine. Beautiful summer's evening, so took him and his wife, went for a drive up there, and so we're driving up, and he saw the cross. And he thought, what's this? Why have you got France in Greenock? But it was that instant reaction, because it was a stunning evening, but that instant reaction of, you stay in a beautiful part of the world. And we do. We don't talk about it often enough. We don't shout about it often enough. And in fact, we do have challenges. We will all acknowledge that there are challenges in our community, but there are challenges in Paisley, there are challenges in Glasgow, there are challenges in Edinburgh. Anywhere you go, there are challenges as well as opportunities. So we've got to try to turn that around. We've got to make people internally, but also externally, more aware of some of the positives we actually have in our community. So I'd made a suggestion, so it was agreed, to have get an allocation of money to be put aside, and also to work with Inverclyde Council, and also try and get some private sector investment in as well, to try to have some type of promotional campaign. Now, that is not going to fix everything, but it's a start. The second suggestion that was agreed was on having an allocation of funds once again, but to work towards entrepreneurship in schools. Because a lot of Inverclyde's economy is public sector based. Now that's not a bad thing, but we need to grow the private sector economy in Inverclyde. So I'd put a suggestion, it was agreed. Now that's something that's not a short-term thing. It's not going to fix everything by next year or the year after. That's going to be a generational thing. Politicians sometimes, usually are accused of actually being short-termism all the time. This isn't one of those policies. It's not one of those things that's actually been agreed to do. So this is about looking ahead. Another aspect, certainly for me, is on the aspect of business rates. Inverclyde has got 1,260 small businesses that actually qualify for the small business bonus. Now, that will help so many businesses in our community. But I acknowledge that there are challenges. I mean, we've already seen quite a lot of correspondence and also a lot of media coverage with regards to business rates. So that's one thing that does actually need to be looked at, and certainly in Parliament again. But also on housing. Housing associations are not building. That's a fact. That's a frustration. £19 million underspent. Now, neighbouring Renfrewshire, they're building houses, different parts of Paisley. North Ayrshire, houses are being built, but not here. So Inverclyde Council last year organised a housing summit. I couldn't go, I was in Parliament, one of my staff members went for me. I welcomed that summit. I welcomed the fact that that initiative was actually taking place. And I know that there are frustrations certainly in the administration, in Inverclyde Council with regards to the lack of houses being built. But Riverclyde Homes are the largest RSL we have. They're not building because they've already got too many properties. So I get the point, I get the frustration that they have, but my goodness, if other local authority areas can actually build, why can't we? If we don't actually have the housing that is required, then how are we going to entice people to actually come in? That makes that job so much harder. So these are kind of some aspects of things that really do matter to me, but also things that I know that certainly would have a hugely beneficial outturn for Inverclyde's community. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Moira. One of the tricks I get learned with the microphone, you're all doing very well with the mic as well, pretend it is, they call them a lollipop mic for a reason, pretend it's a lollipop, don't lick it because you need to pass it on, but if you keep it close to your mouth, everyone will pick you up.
Thank you. If anybody's not picking me up, please put your hand up and I'll immediately put the mic closer to my mouth. Inverclyde. Look, I think that you probably live in one of the most beautiful parts of Scotland. You've got the River Clyde, the Battery Park, all the old industrial heritage that you have. It's beautiful. It's a pleasure to drive down here and to drive down further down towards Gourock and Inverkip and Wemyss. You are probably the luckiest people I know, and I'm going to agree with Stuart. You should be shouting about it. Talk the town up. Talk up what you have by way of natural resources. You are extremely lucky. Now, what would I do? I think for Inverclyde, I think we need to attract investment. We need to get people jobs. And we need to, and these things, they're not silo things. You can't, these are things that are all linked together. And if you can get that right, you'll get the correct outcome with people working, earning money, spending it in the shops, investing some money in the town, doing all those things that people do naturally. So it's all linked up and joined up right, and you can't really have one without the other. But investing in the town where it needs investment is crucially important. As a visitor to the town, you see all the really nice bits of, the front, and as you come into Greenock and into further down after Port Glasgow into Greenock, then further down the coast. But I am aware that there are pockets within Greenock where there are problems that probably could be fixed if people just had a wee bit of common sense, and they paid a bit more attention to those places. I'll give you a small example. I'm not offering a solution, but it's an example of what I witnessed myself. I was helping somebody campaign in Larkfield. Now, I actually struggled to drive down the centre of the road because every side of the street had cars parked on them. And to my horror, a bus was coming up the other side, and I thought, oh my goodness. So I had to reverse away back, turn into somebody else's street to let the bus go by. Inverclyde does need to have housing that's fit for purpose. It has to be fit for the people who are using the houses. The other thing I'm aware of is that there's not been any money spent, or maybe they don't have the money of the council, I don't know, but there are houses that need refurbished, there's housing that's damp, there's housing that's not fit for purpose for people. Now, that should be a priority. Get that right, get the housing stock you already have, and get that fit for purpose for people to live in. And then we can look at building new homes for people as demand requires it. This is probably going to be a wee bit controversial, but I really have to say it. I think that your 20 mile an hour limit is going to perhaps put people off coming down to the town for the day, spending money. People will come once and put up with that. They'll think twice the next time. So you're going to lose tourists, visitors, money spent in shops and cafes, all because of this 20 mile an hour limit that's coming up on the 27th of April. I understand that people are saying, oh, well, it's for safety. Well, I don't know what evidence they have about that. But I did take the time and trouble to check fatalities through road traffic accidents in this area before I came here tonight. You have to go back to 2023, and it's not even clear that it was a pedestrian. It was actually, there's been 3 people killed in fatalities in this area, but I'm not clear whether it's because of parked cars, 30 mile limits. It's just been people who've been registered in the Scottish National Statistics as fatalities. So, and of course, it's not democratic. 94% of people polled have said they don't want it. 94%. Now, where I live, we do have 20 mile limits, but it's only when at certain times it's outside of a school and lights flash when the children are coming out. And that to me is quite sensible because there's a big risk there, a lot of kids coming out, going onto the road, not paying attention. Why this council have decided to have a blanket 20 mile an hour on over 1,000 streets, my goodness. Think of the cost of just changing the road signs. Now, I can tell you, most of you people don't know this probably, but in order to be able to prosecute somebody who's driving more than 20 miles an hour, you have to have a sign on each side of the road. You can't just have one sign. So those signs that you see coming into Greenock saying it's a 20 mile an hour limit, they're useless. They're not legal as far as I'm concerned. What you need is 2 opposed signs telling you the speed limit. That's a cost to everybody in this room, to everybody in the whole of Inverclyde. And I personally, it's just my view, I'm not speaking for Malcolm here, I've not asked or discussed it with him, but I think it's so unnecessary because it doesn't seem to be evidence-based. It seems to be an impingement in people's freedom. There's not been any consultation, which in my view is very undemocratic and unfair. So for these reasons, I think people will be reluctant to come and visit because of that. So I wouldn't have that. That's one of the things I would do to make sure people came here. And finally, I would say that talk up the town. Talk up the good bits, because there's so many of them. And make people aware of just what a great place this is and how friendly people are. And I'm going to finish with a wee story that I think is worth mentioning. A number of years ago now, I was travelling to the Middle East. I had to go there for a particular reason. And I was on a flight, a BA flight, sitting next to quite a young boy. So I got chatting to him, and I says, "Oh, where are you from?" He says, "Oh, I'm going back to Bahrain to work in the Royal Court." I says, "Well, where did you live when you were in Scotland?" He says, "Well, Greenock. I was staying in Greenock." I says, "Oh, that's great." I said, how did you get on? What did you think of the place?" He said, "It's the friendliest place I've ever been in." He says, "The very first night I was there, I was looking for, people kept telling me to go to the wee Tesco or the big Tesco." He says, "I didn't know where I was going." And I said to this lady, "Where's Tesco?" What did she say? She didn't say, "Take a right, take a left." "Oh, look, son, come with me. I'll take you round there." And that stuck in his mind. And he's right. Greenock is one of the friendliest places you can come to. Thank you.
Thank you, Moira. Ted, same question to yourself.
Inverclyde, to move forward, needs to grow its economy. Now, for the past few years, it's lost a lot of businesses. And this is due to a combination of high taxes by the SNP and business taxes by the Labour Party that are making businesses here in Greenock and Inverclyde go to the wall. So one of the many things that we as Conservatives want to do is, one, we wish to start by looking at cutting income tax, cutting it back to 19 pence in the pound, rather than the 21 pence in the pound that the SNP currently is charging. We want to get the same tax as it is in England and Wales. Why should Scotland be sitting at the highest level of taxation for the work that you put in and then be penalised for it? When we look at business rates, how many organisations, how many small businesses are we seeing in the papers every day going into administration because the business costs, the extra tax on individuals for the NI is becoming actually a tax on employment. Also, the business rates. Now, certainly there was talk from the SNP way back 10 years ago. We need to reform the business rate system here in Scotland. Well, here we are 10 years further on, and there's still no reform. And what we've actually seen is the business rates that are being created now. Some small businesses are finding that their business rates are not just going up by 10, 15, 20%. They're going up by 100, 200, possibly 300%. Now, small businesses just can't afford this. This is where we've got to look and get a proper system in. Also, one of the other things that we need to look at is the energy costs. And this is one of the things that, if you go back 5 years, the SNP was saying, it's our oil, it's our oil. What are we seeing today? It seems to be, we'll accept everyone else's oil from all over the world, we'll get it imported into Scotland at an extra cost. That's not helping Scotland at all. We need to actually, like they said 5 years ago, we need to use the resources we've got. Currently, we're importing oil from Norway in the North Sea.
Sorry, Ted, I'd like to keep us on topic. The question we're asking is about making Inverclyde a more appealing place. These are much larger issues which are more national. It's about what to make this place.
There's a lot of people in Inverclyde working in the North Sea.
I appreciate that, but the question is your vision for making Inverclyde a more appealing
Well,
place to visit and relocate
We want to get the business rates down, which helps businesses in Greenock, Gourock, Kilmacud, in Inverclyde. That is a key element of moving forward. Getting income tax down is something that will help Inverclyde directly. There is also, with the wind farms in Scotland, and it's a national thing that can be brought back into Inverclyde. It can help everyone. ScotWind auctions off the wind sites across Scotland. It brings in millions of pounds. Now, those millions of pounds, some of it can be diverted to the people in Inverclyde. What we want to look at is a dividend from the energy costs and the auctions of the wind farms. And we would like to see that be able to put £100 back on energy costs to every council taxpayer in Scotland. That includes Inverclyde. Also, there is a thing called the underspend. The SNP creates a budget which must be adhered to. Quite expected, we all have to live within our budget. However, at the end of the year, there is generally an underspend. That underspend generally just gets moved the following year to the Scottish Government, and the SNP uses it as it likes, generally on its pet projects and supporting the benefits side. We in the Conservative Party can see that if we take the underspend, and if we take the underspend last year, that could actually provide a £200 rebate to every council taxpayer in Scotland, and that includes Inverclyde. That would be another £200 benefiting yourselves, you people sitting here. These are the things that I think can be done, and we will endeavour to do it.
Okay, thank you. Francesca.
Remember me? I spoke to you some time ago, and I hope that the chair and the audience appreciate that I did exercise extreme brevity in my first two responses. So that's something that you can think about. Listen, I'm glad you've got the question up there as a reminder, because with some of those responses, I was just checking that I had the right question for this. Now, one of the things I just want to make a point about before I get into my vision, there's one person sitting on this panel tonight and standing in election in the constituency, same as myself, but that person has been this area's MSP in one form or another for the past 20 years. If I am lucky enough to have the absolute privilege of serving Inverclyde, even for 5, then I won't be standing here saying that Inverclyde lags behind when it comes to tourism. I won't be standing here complaining about the state of Inverclyde Royal Hospital. I won't be admitting that I was forced with my government to take action on Ferguson's after the workforce there were given absolutely shocking treatment, and it was only when they were embarrassed into action by the Greenock Telegraph, the local council, trades unions and the local communities that actually action was taken there. I wouldn't be standing here saying there are problems with the NHS and promising again that there's a new Port Glasgow Health Centre being built when I'd made that same promise in 2021, but the people of Port Glasgow have been let down with no new health centre, and the promise that's been made has been found to be unfunded. This is the sort of cynical treatment of people in Port Glasgow and across Inverclyde that really puts people off politics. As I said, when I talk about my vision, the SNP's had 19 years to deliver a vision for Inverclyde and for Scotland. They're tired, they're out of ideas, and hopefully on the 7th of May we can make sure they're out of time. But back to my vision, Inverclyde made me. It's the place where my ancestors chose to settle and were welcomed to a new life here from other parts of Europe. It's the place where my excellent local education supported me towards working with families in local libraries and teaching in local schools. It's the place where my community wrapped support around my family during tough times, and where I've seen our communities do that time and again. It's a place of kindness and community. It's a great place to live and bring up a family. But like I said, we know we deserve better after 19 years of the SNP government. So we've all said that Inverclyde is an appealing place to visit in so many ways, and sometimes it's us who need to shout that the loudest. But under a low growth, low productivity SNP government, then it's still quite hard to make that case. We've got great places here, and when I'm in other parts of Scotland, as I get to as well, like I said, I work in Drumchapel 2 days a week, I see families from there coming down to places like our waterfront swimming pool, like our Lunderson Bay. But tourism has been let down here. It absolutely has. Brand Scotland is a national brand that's recognised and respected across the world, but the SNP has failed to capitalise on this strength. Tourism is huge for Inverclyde with the number of cruise ships that berth here, and so often I hear people in Inverclyde say, we're embarrassed, we want this to be better for tourists. And I say, I want it to be better for tourists, but I want it to be better for us who live here as well. So that's something that's so important. I think part of my vision as well to make it a more appealing place to visit or relocate or open a business is also to do with that crime and that reputation that I talked about before. Last year there were 749 antisocial offences, and this was up a 26% increase on the previous year. Now, we've got big plans in Scottish Labour to reform crime and policing. We'll put a named crime prevention officer in every ward. And another thing that we'll do is introduce a mental health emergency response service so that people who are really struggling with mental health and at crisis point don't get a police response, they get a trained medical professional who's going to come and see them. But also it frees up police time so that they're not stuck on the M8 or responding to calls that aren't really part of what they went into policing for, and that will really help to make people in Inverclyde feel safer and improve our communities. I've not just looked at that or talked about it or read it. I've been out several times this year shadowing the police in different experiences so that I know exactly what Inverclyde's problems are and how I could address them if I was lucky enough to be elected as the area's MSP. Housing is so important as well. It is really important, but a Scottish Labour government will unlock a housing revolution. We'll make sure that housing associations don't refuse to build. We'll make sure that there's housing of all different tenures built here. We'll overhaul planning and unlock land so that that's possible. And part of that will be back to one of my priorities that I mentioned before, the new apprenticeships as well, and regional employability hubs, so that we're training a construction workforce and making sure our young people have opportunities with these apprenticeships and are getting jobs if that's the path that they choose to follow. My vision isn't one where I say all of Inverclyde's problems, they're not anything to do with me. My vision is partly me fighting alongside you for Inverclyde, like as somebody described me earlier this week when I was out knocking doors, like a dog with a bone.
Thank you very much. So we've had two questions now which have focused primarily on Inverclyde, and now we're going to be moving on to some larger issues where we have asked each of our candidates to have an opportunity to respond. These ones I'm expecting your responses probably to be slightly shorter, and that would be expected because of the nature of the questions. And our first one is regards to social media and young people. You stole my job, that was my next one. I'm only joking. So our next question is on about social media and young people. Now, many parents and teachers are increasingly worried about the impact of social media on young people's well-being, safety, and behaviour. And at the same time, others question whether outright bans are realistic or effective. So the question to each of our candidates, and in this one we'll start with Ted Runciman. What are your views on the proposed ban from social media for children until the age of 16? And our first question goes to Ted.
Thank you. Can I ask, ladies, how many parents here monitor their children's access to social media? I'm seeing about half a dozen hands out of this room. That's a bit amazing. Yes, social media gets everywhere. And are we looking after our children, our under 16s? And this is something that we need to look at carefully. That social media is getting into our homes more and more each year. Our children are being exposed to pornography, violence, and other issues. They're open to people contacting them, actually stalking them, and this is something that we need to look at and find out, are we in charge? We would never allow children under 16 to be allowed to see such content, pornography, violence, contacts from strangers, etc. And the dangers are real in this world. This is why we, as Conservatives, would go for a ban on social media. It's very difficult to do it, that I appreciate. But I think we as parents owe our children that security and safety. Otherwise, how many children do we see how many children have we seen in the grooming gangs, etc., that have been targeted through social media? This is something we need to look at. So not only do social media platforms highlight explicit content, they're also extremely addictive. And once they get children hooked on it, they pull them in again and again and again. And certainly, they exploit anxiety. And a lot of young children, they're still developing. And if some of those people on social media attach onto that anxiety, they can then hook them in. This can have drastic consequences, especially with younger users whose self-control isn't as developed as we as adults. Protecting childhood is one of the things that is a key element for us as parents. We need to make sure that we are protecting our children from the vile information that can be found, and it comes in whether they like it or not. They find ways of streaming it into various different programs. I say we must take a stand, and I would say we ban children under 16 getting access to social media.
Thank you, Ted. You got the feel of the room and you stopped. Gold star. Great. Okay, we turn now. We're going to ask the next question to Moira. Ask yourself.
Thank you. Well, I'm not quite sure what we're talking about when we're talking about a ban. That's the first thing. Are we talking about parents or groups of parents who have decided that their children will not be exposed to social media, and they, as the parent, have said they're not getting an iPhone or a phone that gets social media on it? Or are we talking about some kind of an offence for a parent to allow a child under 16 to, in fact, access social media? So we need to be clear about what we're talking about. Now, I had children who had iPhones, and once I realised, because I'm not all that savvy myself about these things, but I did realise they had access to an awful lot of content that, quite frankly, I was shocked at. I couldn't believe that they could access that kind of information at the flick of a switch, or the touch of a button. Now, this may sound draconian, but I took the iPhones off them. They were still under contract. I still had to pay for them. All I needed to know was where were my children, or was there a problem with it they could phone me. So what I provided them with was just a wee Nokia phone. No social media, no nothing. Now, that caused a bit of a stooshy, let me tell you. And on top of that, they claimed that they were being bullied at school because they didn't have a social media iPhone. And they were using these, they called them bricks. But it was just a wee phone that if anything happened, or if I needed to speak to them, we could do that. I don't know, I mean, as a parent myself, I don't know why we're even discussing access to social media. Parents should simply not allow it. But if parents are allowing it, then you've got to look at what control do we have as a society. If the child's parent is permitting it, what can society do to prevent that happening? I don't think it's a good idea to make it a criminal offence for a parent to allow a child to have social media. I am in favour of the social media giants who use algorithms to hook people in to social media websites, particularly children, particularly vulnerable people. And they're the ones that the government should be targeting. They should be fined, they should have rules, they should have a regulatory body, and it's not simply... These people make millions, billions of pounds, but we have to think about the age of a child, that child's vulnerability, and you'll have heard and read, I'm sure, in the newspapers and media that some people have actually killed themselves on the basis of what they've been told in social media. It's just not acceptable. So as a parent myself, I would urge parents not to allow their children to have a phone that would permit them to have social media until such times as they are 16. And there then has to be an adult conversation with that 16-year-old about the dangers of social media. And try to educate our children not to go into these websites that they have a worldwide access to anything they like. So that would be me. I would just not give them a phone. Thank you.
Stuart McMillan.
Okay. So obviously this is an issue that is reserved to Westminster, and the Scottish Parliament can't really kind of look at deal with the regulatory aspect. But I do believe that Ofcom, as the regulator, I think they do need to do more with the powers that they currently have. I'm also aware that the UK government are undertaking a public consultation at the moment on this particular issue. I think that's due to end in May from memory. But certainly I know the Scottish Government were engaging with the UK Government on the issue also, prior to the election. But I'm somewhat conflicted on it, because I'm a parent, I've got two teenage girls, and I think the point about bullying that you just touched upon, Moira, before social media and before mobile phones, when bullying was taking place, there was a bit of respite when kids would leave the school and go home, whereas that's not the case now. It can be 24 hours a day. And the impact that can have on anxiety that Ted touched upon, whether it's mental health, whether it's self-harming. So there are many aspects of social media that have such a detrimental effect upon individuals in our society. So from that element, I'm very much supportive of the principle of a ban. A bit conflicted, as I say, because there are aspects of whether it's the mobile phones or whether it's the actual social media itself that actually they can get some really positive information. But that then does come down to also kind of the parental responsibility also. But the consultation that the UK government are undertaking at the moment, I really will be looking at their outcome, their final report on what actually comes in. But I know the Scottish Government, they're looking at this also from a public health approach. And I know they are looking at, it's in the SNP have indicated in the manifesto about bringing forward some type of scheme to work with parents and also young people with regards to the use of social media because of that public health aspect and the challenges that face young people in our society. But one other element to it, and I haven't done the constitutional point tonight, because some of the aspects that we have touched upon have not been about the Constitution. If Scotland were an independent country, one thing that we could actually consider would be like some type of levy on the social media companies. Now that could happen at the moment by the UK government. But if that didn't happen and Scotland does become an independent country, a social media levy is something that can actually take place. To actually put a bit more responsibility on them, get some money from them, because, I mean, we've already heard some of what's actually online is just abhorrent, vile, in every way, shape and form, as well as the exact opposite. So social media companies, in my opinion, in the main, they don't care. It's just about making money. They're that big, and it's just about making money, with very little by way of a social responsibility. So it's, as I said, a bit conflicted, but at the same time, there's a responsibility that they actually have to undertake as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Francesca. There, you get to go first next time. Okay, so on you go.
Oh, thanks so much, Jonathan, and I'm delighted to see we've got quite a few young people in the room tonight. So that's really good to see, and I'm sure they would have very, very clear ideas and guidance that they would want to give to politicians when it comes to this issue. And maybe if they're kind enough and generous enough, they might be able to email me or get in touch with me after tonight. Now, I trained in library and information studies. People were all talking about their degrees earlier on. That's not why I'm here, but I trained in that, and I've also got a history degree. So those two things kind of came into play in my answer to this question. I'll explain why. Obviously, library and information studies, then, you know, tech and digital support is really, really important, and I absolutely support, you know, digital inclusion and want people to have more access to high-speed internet so that they can access all the services they need to. That said, I think when it comes to social media, there's no other product that we might look at, like skincare, toys, food, where we would see in plain sight the harms that it causes and do absolutely nothing, especially when it comes to children. I actually believe that we'll look back on this time and question why it took so long for us to act. I hear people saying that they don't oppose a ban because people will find ways around it. And I think that's the worst and weakest argument that I've actually ever heard about anything. That's like saying anything that's harmful, people will find ways to do it, but you still put in rules and regulations around it to try and tackle the damage that it does. I think that we're in a kind of unique period, but we're taking quite long to catch up, where there's the difference between the online world and the sort of IRL world. And I think at the moment what we see is a bit of a lawless frontier without the regulations that have been introduced in real life as civilizations formed, and that needs to change. And I have questioned it, and I hope that, you know, the young people, I think, will see this more, that they'll be growing up probably more skilled and equipped than somebody of my age or, you know, older, in how to kind of police it independently, but we do need extra support around that. I mentioned my history degree because I think about the big tech companies, and I do think about, you know, learning that I did around the printing press and how that was a shocking item when it first came into play, and people were reading magazines that had come out through the printing press. And I've thought, is the internet, is social media the modern day equivalent of that? But I don't think it is. I think that tech companies have dragged their heels and refused to sufficiently engage, and they've declared that they are merely publishers, when actually there's really, really harmful content that we know, everybody in this room who's online knows that gets pushed to you to make money, essentially. I think the studies that show the effects of reducing social media amongst young people, you know, give a lot of positive changes, like reduction in anxiety, sleep quality, spending time with friends, family, improved well-being, improved body image, looking at school absences as well. I've not just looked at studies, though. I have listened to parents, teachers and young people, and I've met with schools here in Inverclyde and representatives of schools across Scotland to talk about this in more detail and see what needs to happen. And that's why, it's one of the reasons actually that, the mental health impacts, that I'm on the board of local grassroots mental health charity The Anchor, formerly Manon Inverclyde, and I support that organisation as it works more and more on improving young people's mental health. As a Scottish Labour government, and again, if I'm fortunate enough to get elected in May, we're looking to really crack down on a ban of mobile phones in classrooms. It's a linked issue so that schools are calm and safe places for learning once more. There is guidance out there on that, but we'll actually act and not just take that decision, leave it over to individual schools to make their own choices. People I've spoken to about that have said they've already seen improved outcomes in social interaction, not just in attainment, but the mood of the school is much better. There's not that face down in the mobile phone. There's eyes up, looking and interacting with each other, which can only be a positive thing. So just in conclusion, I absolutely support the ban. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, social media and young people reminds me very much of the Netflix series that some of you may have watched in recent times, Adolescence, which was a very controversial programme and really brought a lot of situations to the fore. And one of the things which it did bring to my attention in particular was that of misogyny. And there is growing concern from teachers and parents and pupils themselves about misogynistic attitudes in schools, sometimes linked to online influencers. Now, many feel that this is becoming harder to manage and needs stronger action. So my question to each of you, beginning with Francesca, is in light of the growing misogynistic culture in our schools towards female pupils and teachers, what would you do to ensure that our education sector is supported in seeking to eliminate such behaviour? Beginning with Francesca.
Thanks very much, Jonathan. Tackling violence against women and girls alongside increasing women's representation in politics were actually a couple of key reasons for me going into politics, and I've spoken to people in this room about this recently and kind of outlined that they were what got me in the room, but then when I was in the room I realised all the challenges that are out there and all the problems that a politician and elected representative like me wants to solve. I've talked in forums like this before about my work in John Menzies, or now W.H. Smith, when I was 16 in the Oak Mall, and my small but important direct action protest of refusing to give plastic bags to the people who bought top shelf magazines when I worked at the confectionery tobacco news counter, that I thought that was my small act of protest to try and tackle misogyny when I was 16. Now that was 30 years ago, and I realised in due course that we needed to do much more than that. And I think it's important to say that the growth of misogynistic culture lets everyone down, not just female pupils and teachers, but also the young men who are growing up surrounded by a potentially quite toxic culture. And I think that's important to note. As a woman who wants to stem the flow of misogyny, I've thought long and hard about how to bring people together on this, because I think it's really important that it is an issue where not only women should speak out about it, and sometimes male allies, as I often talk about, can be some of the most effective message carriers on it. And I know sometimes some people that I work with who are really well-meaning, they might find that hard, but it can't just be women talking about a growing culture of misogyny, and we need all those really respectful, thoughtful men out there to take up this cause as well. And it's a cause that's really, really close to my heart. Even alongside Jonathan and some other faith leaders in this room, I organised an annual church service in St Mary's Church just down the road to mark the 16 days of activism to tackle violence against women and girls, and that was really well supported by faith communities because of some of the great work they do in leading on some of these issues that again need different parts of the community to come together. And again, I introduced in my role as a counsellor a women's safety charter that I was keen to see rolled out across the area. it's an example, this issue, of one of the ways that as Scottish Labour we'll fix the mess and get the basics right, because we've got a plan to develop a new misogyny reduction unit, which would be part of the violence reduction unit that many of you will have heard of, that was really, really pivotal in tackling some big, endemic, sort of, all-consuming issues like knife crime, in a way that misogyny is now, and looking at really innovative ways of actually making a difference there. It's another thing, like the previous issue, is actually quite linked to as well, and we'll act on this. Another way in which we would tackle the growing misogynistic culture is looking at the Equally Safe in Schools programme. And again, in my role as an elected representative, that's something that I've been keen to see introduced, and there are other programmes, but the Equally Safe in Schools programme is known to be very effective. And I think one of the things that I'd really, really want to do is take action and work really closely with young people and really reach out to them. In Inverclyde, we are very respectful, I think, of the way that we work with young people, to not try and push politics into, school or further education environments, but I think there are ways of doing that respectfully, listening to the people who are there and really getting to the root of this problem. And it would be something that I would be really honoured and privileged to be a part of actually tackling if I was elected in May. Thank you.
Thank you. Same question to Moira.
Thank you. Well, misogyny in schools is something that's new to me, because when I was in school, which was quite some time ago now, children were respectful to the teacher, respectful to each other. There was no, there may have been some bullying, but there was always bullying, but it wasn't an issue. But misogyny was certainly nothing that came across the horizon of school when I was there. And I can only assume, because I can only make an educated guess, that something somewhere has gone wrong if we're talking here tonight about misogyny in schools. So what has changed? Is it parenting? Is it a lack of respect? Is it something we're failing in education? Is it in fact the internet? Another factor possibly. So I think probably we need to get back to basics, and young men, and I don't want to label all young men, because that's not fair either. There are many young men in schools who will properly respect the girls at school and the teacher, and there will be a cohort of others who may not share that respect and those values. And I think part of the problem, and this is a personal view, part of the problem is moving away, as society is moving away and has been for some time now, to, I'm going to describe them as fundamental Christian values, where we respect everybody, we respect each other no matter what the circumstances are. And somehow along the journey of where we are from up to today, we've lost something. We've lost that respect. We've lost that need to respect other people and be kind and do the right thing. So education, I'm almost hesitant to say it, but if indeed there is a misogynistic problem in a school, then there should be some discussion amongst the senior teaching staff about how to tackle it. It may well be discussion groups involving young men and women to air their grievances, their problems, their issues, and get to the bottom of why this behaviour is becoming an issue in a school. Because if we don't talk, if you don't get people talking about it, you won't really fully understand the problem, and you have to listen to what's been said, and you have to act upon what you've been told. Now, it's not a one-size-fits-all. So the government can say what they like, and we're going to do this and we're going to do that, or any other government that comes in. But everything in every school is probably very different from other areas. Some schools may have no problem. Other schools may have a big problem. So those teaching areas need to get together and identify if they have a problem, what's the cause of the problem, and what we as a school, as educators, are going to do to solve that problem. And if it means having to speak to parents, speak to the children, have useful focus groups and discuss the issue so they understand it and they're aware of it, they're self-aware. These are very important things because I think young men, and they're maturing and coming into teenage years and all sorts of things are going on. Their hormones are all over the place. But they just have to understand that how they behave towards women has and can have a detrimental impact. They may be unaware of it, I don't know, but I think it would be the educator's responsibility, the parent's responsibility to make sure that their child is not behaving in that way. Thank you.
Thanks, Moira. Next, our question goes to Ted next.
Thank you. As my other two panelists have indicated, trying to educate young males to appreciate not the pitfalls and the impact of misogynistic approaches to fellow female pupils, teachers, and females in general outside of school is not an easy subject to broach. It is something that we have to look at and build into the school curriculum. And it's something that, as I say, we do have to find a way that educating young males that being superior to a fellow girl or teacher is not the proper way to go about it. They are equal. We are all equal, both males and girls. This is something we've got to get across to them. And it can be done through sports events, it can be done through, certainly, as I say, something introduced into the school curriculum that we must respect the other sex. We must respect our teachers, particularly the female teachers. When we see the number of assaults on teachers, particularly female, it's very disturbing and something that we have got to stop.
Thank you. And the same question to you, Stuart.
Thank you. First of all, we are not alone in this, having this particular issue. I mean, it's not just a UK issue, this is a global issue. I've had dialogue with politicians from other countries when they come to visit the Scottish Parliament, and this is one of the topics that will come up on a regular basis, whether it's misogyny in schools or whether it's about violence against women and girls. It comes up at practically every discussion. So there is a wider societal issue. No one government is actually going to fix this. No one government can fix this because it is a wider societal issue. And when you actually have politicians saying that politicians in the USA, and I think you know who I'm talking about, some of the language that came from that one individual in particular, if that's what this leader or so-called leader is actually coming out with, then that just opens the floodgates and actually helps to kind of get that message out to basically younger men and males as a whole that actually this is acceptable. It is not acceptable. Boys need to do better. Men need to do better. The point about allies, male allies, absolutely. So through something called the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, every parliament in the Commonwealth is a member of this. In the Scottish Parliament, it was in 2 sessions ago, it was Maurice Corrie, who was a Conservative MSP. He was the person who wanted to and was elected to actually become the champion on dealing with violence against women and girls. It came across as being a bit strange because it was such an older gentleman who actually had this particular role. Maurice attempted to engage in certainly across different parliaments and with politicians elsewhere. And he did that because he took the role seriously, because he recognised this was a problem, that men are part of the problem, but they're also part of the solution. But it wasn't widely accepted elsewhere because it saw this I'll be kind, he was Morris at that point was probably in his 60s. So this older gentleman, grey hair, people maybe might have thought he's out of touch. But actually, he was trying to do the right thing. So I think fundamentally there is an issue that we all as a wider society have got to try and look at ourselves. Look at how we actually engage with community. How do we engage with younger people? How do we engage with people that we come across in society? Now I know that in the SNP manifesto is there in black and white that we will bring forward a misogyny bill in the next Parliament if the SNP are elected as the government. Bringing forward a bill and legislation is one thing. But as I said, as I've indicated a few moments ago, this is a wider societal thing. So it takes all of us in this room and all of us in our community to actually engage further. Now, on the principal point of the question about schools, now I don't have all the answers, and I know there are folk in this room who either are teachers or are retired teachers. For me, I think one of the fundamental points is to continually have that dialogue with trade unions, continually have that dialogue with teachers, to engage with them to find out exactly, not so much about what the problems are, but actually, do they have any potential solutions? Do they have any potential ideas to try to take this further forward? But fundamentally, I think that there has to be more dialogue also between parliaments, because I think if one particular part of the world can start to make some headway in this, that will actually be so beneficial for across the world. But also, hopefully at the next elections in the US, there's somebody else sitting in that White House, that someone has actually got a bit of a heart to actually engage and actually try to deal with some of the serious issues as compared to some of the nonsense that individuals come out with.
Okay. Thank you very much, Stuart. Friends, I am conscious that we have been sitting still for 90 minutes now. Can I ask you for just 1 minute, if you're able, we're not going to sing a hymn, can I ask you to stand up for a second? If you're able. And can I ask you just to give your hands a shake? All right. You can stop that now. You can turn your head to the side, to one side, turn it to the other. Look to the people around you. Take a deep breath in. Deep breath out. You're a bit more relaxed, a bit more supple. You can have a seat. Have a seat and relax. You're all doing very well. Okay. Would you like a top up? Okay. Now, Moira, we are going to start with you on the next question. Okay. Everyone else okay? Do you want a top up? You want me to? You all right with that? Yeah, that's fine. That is. Yeah. Okay. So, this is not to diminish the importance of these questions, but I'm conscious that time is marching on, and I want to give some room for some questions from the floor as well. Okay? I'm hoping that we will be wrapped up at approximately 9 p.m. Is that okay with everybody? That all right? Good. Super. We're not going into extra time. It's not a Morton game. Anyway. And to keep these, if I could ask you to try and keep these questions to about 2 minutes at tops, that would be really, really helpful. Now, Moira, the next question is on conversion therapy. Okay? So the question is that this is an issue that has sparked strong opinions, with some arguing a ban is needed to protect vulnerable people, while others raise concerns about how it would be defined and enforced. And the simple question is, what are your views on the proposed ban on conversion therapy? Moira.
Thank you. Just so that I've understood the question, because I didn't unfortunately get a copy of all the questions before I came here tonight, but my understanding of what we're talking about here is gender conversion therapy. Is that correct, Jonathan?
Yes, there is.
Yeah. Well, it'll be no surprise to any of you here. As a lawyer, I listened to the Supreme Court ruling that in terms has said very clearly that it's a biological determination and it's not a chosen sex. So if you're biologically born as a man, you're a man. If you're biologically born as a woman, and that's down to your chromosomes, you're a woman. And you can't one day say, well, you know what, I think I feel a bit manly today. And I'm not trying to be funny about the whole situation, but you know, this is to me, this is a bit of a trend, but we need to be very clear that conversion therapy is not something that we should be welcoming into our society. Now, sorry? Oh, that's why I asked the question to start with, if it was clear.
Let me ask the question. Okay. Sorry to put you in the spot. Would you be able to say a wee word about that, please?
I think the lady's referring to the transgender issue, and this is about conversion therapy, which is individuals who are maybe homosexual orientation seeking guidance from Christian organisations to be cured. That's what it is.
That's one. Is that how, folks? Is that how people understand it on the floor? And it's on that basis the question to be asked, Moira. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I did, to be fair to myself, I did ask a question that I thought I was talking about the right thing, but I can move on to that. Well, if we're talking here about conversion therapy, meaning people who are homosexual asking to be converted as if homosexuality is an illness, I think, is that what you're meaning? Yeah, that's right. Okay. I personally, and I'm not speaking for Malcolm Alford here because I haven't had this discussion with him, but what I can say as a Reform candidate, I am saying to you that I do not think that, I think that's not understanding the actual issue. Homosexuality is, it's in our society. There are people who have, desires. A man might sexually be attracted to another man, same for women, that's fine, but I do not think it should be treated, it's not an illness, in my view. I don't see it as an illness. I see it as somebody who's made a choice in their life based on their own desires, hormones, whatever you want to call it, and I think it's a mistake to say that somehow or another this is an illness that we should try to get rid of out of society, and that we could, through conversion therapy, change that person's mind, show them the way, help them to get over that trait. I just do not think that is how it should be looked at. People should be allowed to make their own choices, their own sexual choices, and just get on with their life. And everybody else should just leave them alone. There's no need for people to start interfering and to make it look as if it's a medical condition. So that would be my view on conversion therapy.
Thank you, Moira. Thank you, Moira, and thank you, especially when you didn't have an opportunity to have the question before, so many thanks indeed. Ted, same question to yourself.
The UK government has looked at the legislative and non-legislative areas around, conversion therapy. The aim of the research was to look at what forms of conversion therapy, what experiences conversion therapy treated and why, what are the outcomes of conversion therapy, and what measures have been taken to end conversion therapy. In looking at from the period January 2000 to June 2020, 46 studies have been evaluated. Most evidence was specifically focused on conversion therapy aimed at changing sexual orientation, with only 5 articles specifically addressing conversion therapy for gender change. There was also carried out a quantitative study to gather evidence of the experience of people in the UK who had undertaken gender therapy. And 30 individuals were interviewed, 16 men, 12 women, 2 non-binary, and had experience with either sexual orientation, change efforts, 24, gender identity, 3, or both, 3. To answer question 4, research was carried out to the grey literature to identify measures taken around the world to end conversion therapy. What were the key findings? What forms does conversion therapy take? Evidence suggests that modern forms of conversion therapy are commonly based on the belief of same-sex sexual orientation, transgender identities, and developmental disorders, addictions, and spiritual problems. The most common methods were identified involving a combination of spiritual methods, for example, prayers, healing, exorcisms, or pastoral counseling. Psychological methods, for example, talking therapies. The boundaries between religious and psychological approaches are often unclear, with many combining the two in a way that could be described as pseudo-scientific. Conversion therapy appears to be commonly carried out in religious settings by religious individuals or organizations, but may be done by mental health professionals or family members. In some cases, secular mental health professionals may treat minority gender identities, for example, non-binary, or binary sexual orientations, for example, asexual. The symptoms for existing mental health conditions. It's unclear how often this deliberate attempt at conversion therapy. There is less evidence relating to gender identity change efforts, but what evidence there is suggests that conversion therapy with transgender people can take a very similar form to that of changing sexuality.
Sorry, Ted, can I give you 30 seconds? Your views on the proposed ban?
My view is that it is very rarely seen as having proven benefits, and I would oppose it.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ted. And thank you for winding that up. I'm going to come to Stuart next in this one.
Thank you. The SNP, in the manifesto, the SNP have said that they'll bring forward legislation in this particular regard if the UK government don't introduce it. Now, I'm a straight man. Some of the discussions I've had with friends and colleagues in the past who are gay, and some of the horror stories that they have indicated about how the problems they had coming out, the challenges they had coming out, and particularly kind of engaging with family and friends. So I will never understand exactly how difficult that actually was for these individuals, for my friends and colleagues. But I also find that there are folk who will have a very strong view about this. I cannot remember the last time anybody contacted me as MSP about conversion therapy. So it's not a huge issue, but I absolutely fully understand and accept and acknowledge people are gay. That's what our society, we have got people in our society who are gay. They're not going to change. Attempting to force a conversion therapy on them, I think, is the wrong thing to do. So I fully support any legislation that comes in this regard.
Thank you, Stuart. And finally to Francesca.
Thank you. I think just briefly, with all due respect, Moira, you've shown up tonight and got yourself to Inverclyde because Reform obviously couldn't get an Inverclyde resident or representative to take billionaire yacht owner Malcolm Offord's place on the panel. But I think the response shows a complete and utter failure to take the time to understand the issues and present here eloquent and prepared.
Please.
Keep to my own views.
Malcolm is on national TV, right, for the Scottish people. You should be saying that.
I've just said that myself, sir. So,
ladies and gentlemen, Reform representatives
Please
in action.
continue.
Just So very, very briefly, I support the ban on conversion therapy in inverted commas, and I support it on a four-nation basis to prevent any loopholes that could allow this practice to continue in certain parts of the UK. And as Scottish Labour, we'll ensure that people's rights are respected and upheld on a broader human rights platform, but we won't follow the SNP approach of legislating without resources. Thank you.
It was all going so well.
That was just like it happened in Paisley.
Yep. And sir,
put somebody down, it's not even there. It's on national TV.
Sir, as soon as it started, I intervened and asked for it to stop. You maybe never heard me over the mic, but I did say if we could keep to your views, please. So I fully took that on board. Thank you. Now, we have one question left, and this is, I'm just going to go straight into the question without any preamble. And again, if we could keep our answers short on this one, not minimising the issue itself, but just to allow for questions from the floor. The simple question to each of you, and for this one, I will start with Stuart. The question is, do you oppose further decriminalisation of abortion?
Thank you. So briefly, abortion is a legal right, this is actually one of the topics, one of the subject areas that as a man, it's actually quite difficult for a man to actually genuinely engage in it. Fundamentally, it's a woman's body. It's not mine. It should be a woman's choice, not mine. So certainly the SNP in the manifesto do not support restricting this particular aspect.
Thank you very much. And this time, we'll go back to Francesca.
Thanks very much, Jonathan. I appreciate that point. I think it's on this question that I feel it is important to note that I'm the only woman standing in Inverclyde's constituency in this election, and there's an issue with that in itself, because when there aren't enough women in the room, then we do end up with men talking about women's autonomy over their own bodies, and that's not been my experience of the men I work with politically or in other walks of life. It's not been my experience that that's what they want to happen. I'm also the only person standing in Inverclyde who knows the privilege and the responsibility of carrying a child inside of me, for me, much longed for and wanted children. And I do also, unfortunately, know what it's like to experience pregnancy loss, 2 second trimester losses, and I know how affected I personally was by that loss. Those pregnancies ended naturally and I struggled, and I remember somebody that helped me through that time alongside family, friends, Inverclyde's kind community said, when it's time for us to say goodbye, you'll take something positive from this. And part of my political experience is that. So listen, I don't oppose further decriminalisation of abortion. I think anybody who's watched even just an episode of BBC's Call the Midwife gets a chance to see how painful the detail of women who are exploited when forced into illegal terminations. And we know the history of women whose pregnancies were dangerous for them, and when the baby inside them wasn't going to survive, but they were forced to continue with potentially fatal pregnancies because of criminalisation. So as a Scottish Labour government, we'll protect women's reproductive rights and ensure they're able to access the full range of reproductive services. And importantly, we'll also deliver safe maternity services in every part of the country. And I think, again, it would be one of these questions that would be good to be looked at in that way. I mean, there's a really interesting podcast for people who like podcasts called Things Fell Apart, which is the origin stories of the culture wars. And this question and issue in itself has become a bit of a toxic political dividing line, in a way that I don't think personally correlates with my own Christian experience or reflects the compassionate, dignified approach we want for women who are making really, really challenging decisions at a time when our NHS has been damaged and feels for many like it's at breaking point. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question goes to Moira. Excuse me. hold the points till afterwards, please? Thank you.
Can I just ask to explain what
The questions will be at the end, John, if it's okay. Thank you. Moira, if you'd like to come in.
Thank you. I'm going to make the assumption, and I'll be corrected if I'm wrong, that what we're really talking about is changing the current legislation around abortion, which is quite old now, it's been there for quite some time, and actually taking away or decriminalising abortion up to the point of delivery. So you could have an abortion at 9 months. I think that's what we're talking about. Is that correct? Yeah? So I oppose that. That's my position, and I believe that.
Thank you, Moira. Ted.
Seeing as the time, I'll be short and sweet. I am pro-choice. However, I would limit it to 12 weeks, not the current 24, unless in very specific circumstances, such as rape, incest, or major medical problems that would put either the mother or the child in great difficulty. I am opposed to further decriminalisation of abortion.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Friends, we are now able to take questions from the floor, and the hands are straight up. Right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it countdown style. I'm going to take one from the back and come to the front, if that's okay. So I'm just going to start that just because it's better for my legs. I've been standing still for a while. So, if I could take this gentleman at the back, perhaps if you could, first of all, if there's anyone particularly you're asking the question to, if you could begin with that and then enter your question. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank the panellists tonight for the discussion. I've got a question for Francesca, please. Your party says in its manifesto that Labour will advance the Glasgow Airport rail link as a national priority. The Glasgow Airport link was estimated to cost £600 million in 2019 and has been scrapped. Construction costs have increased greatly since then. How much will it cost? How will it be paid for? And what is the benefit for Inverclyde?
This is where I get my steps in. Francesca.
Thanks very much for a question specifically directed to myself. I feel very valued. So listen, I absolutely support that move to advance the Glasgow Airport rail link. I think we talked quite a lot about tourism and business, all of us in our individual responses about our vision for Inverclyde. So that's why I would absolutely welcome it. Anything that opens up our area and makes public transport access even better, opens up that infrastructure in a way that boosts our economy is something to be welcomed by myself and I think most Inverclyde residents. I think when you mentioned that, we talked about, somebody else earlier asked me in the audience about do I support the removal of the Bullring roundabout, and in a way the questions are linked because I think it's that opening up, that vision, that ambition for trying to say to people, look, we're open, Inverclyde's here, you can come here, but you're absolutely right, it will be a costly project, but I think you've got to think big when it comes to Inverclyde and Scotland as a whole. For too long we've been trapped by the SNP, 19 years, as I've said several times tonight, of a kind of low productivity, low growth, kind of stifling, I would say, sort of stagnation, where it's saying it's their fault down there, it's their fault down there, blaming a government elsewhere instead of using all the levers that we have at our disposal to make Inverclyde the best place it can be and Scotland the best place it can be. Our manifesto is fully costed and we've looked carefully at all the different promises they've made, so much so that there are even things where I would think, let's go further, but I know that people have looked at it really carefully and I've been proud to be part of that manifesto and that vision for an ambitious Scotland. They've had 19 years, give us 5.
Okay, yes madam. Hang on a minute sir, someone else is asking a question, I'll come to you in a moment, okay? Sorry, excuse me? The question was the question was asked directly by the individual to one of the individual candidates. So, sorry, if you'd like to carry on.
I think that the people of Scotland deserve to have absolute respect and dignity in politics. And I think that we've not seen an awful lot of that dignity in politics, where there have been lots of personal attacks on individual candidates. But one of the things that I am really concerned about that has been highlighted wholly in this last Scottish Parliament is the amount of sleaze that has been treated as business as usual and normality in politics. We've had a youth parliament where we've had young people who were entrusted to go to the Scottish Parliament. It was not respected by the actual Scottish Parliament because they allowed people complaining to be left totally exposed and to be, instead of supported and complaints dealt with, these people were basically...
I'm sorry, can I ask
the question is...
Can I frame it as a question, please?
Okay,
Thank you.
so the question is, how will you handle this level of abuse of our young people and anyone in Scottish politics who raises complaint about any form of abuse in the next Parliament?
Thank you for the question. Who would like to begin with that question? It's not been aimed at anyone in particular. Moira, yes?
Thank you for the question. I know a wee bit about the Scottish Youth Parliament. The first thing I do know is that its first president, or whatever his title was, James Rennie, ended up doing 4 years in prison for interfering with an 18-month-old baby in a sexual way. That's the first thing. Is it a 6-month baby? Thanks for that correction, I appreciate that. I've also personally been, because of my own background, been helping 2 people who were encouraged to join the Scottish Youth Parliament, and who one of whom ended up he was taken to a bar in Glasgow. They knew he was only 17. The next I remembered, he woke up in a taxi, bleeding, and the taxi driver had actually found him in the street and he was taking him up to the Royal Alexandria in Paisley, and he discovered from the medics that he'd been sexually abused. So I'm not saying everybody involved in the Scottish Youth Parliament are like that and would undertake that kind of behaviour. But I think if you do have a parliament for youth that's not monitored and dealt with properly, it should be shut down.
Thank you, Moira. Anybody else from the panel wishing to respond? Yep. Oh, sorry. Stuart, you have your hand raised, sorry.
I think the Youth Parliament as a whole, I think it's an important institution. However, clearly there have been instances that have taken place, and I think the aspect about how it's looked upon, how it's actually considered by external bodies, I think is extremely important. I generally wouldn't want to see it shut down, because I do think it is actually a way of helping younger people actually engage with politics. But fundamentally, there is a board of the Youth Parliament. What were they doing? Why were they not listening? And I think for me, that's more of the question in terms of their responsibilities. I chair Moving On Inverclyde. I've been on the board since 2015, and it's a recovery service locally. And I take my responsibilities on that particular board extremely importantly, as all board members do. Now, that's about adults and not youngsters and teenagers. But it is absolutely essential that any organisation that is dealing with younger people actually has that strength of a board. And if the board can't do it, then individuals need to go. And if it does mean if folk undertake activities and they're caught and they go through the process and they go to jail, that's where they deserve to be.
Thank you. Stuart. Francesca?
Thanks very much, and thanks for that question. I think respect and dignity in politics, like all walks of life is really important, and I think one of the key things to do is that you have to model that yourself in all your dealings, to be kind and respectful. And I think we've talked a lot about social media tonight, and I think that comes into play here, that people have lost a bit of their inhibitions really when it comes to social media, and that's filtered into real life as well, where they feel they can say things behind a screen that aren't really acceptable. A thing that I hear so often when I'm speaking to so many people in this election and in my role as an elected representative is all politicians are the same. And I think, well, we do have things in common the way that all of us across humanity do. And I think, would you say that in other walks of life? And I think actually people probably would, because we've seen abusive politicians, and I'm not naive enough to think that anybody in this room is having that as their top priority, abusive politicians. But it is dangerous for our democracy. As I said, one of the reasons I went into politics was because I think, well, if I'm not doing it, then who is? I want to see more of us really engaged in our democracy. But the abuse that politicians might face means that it puts people off, and that is damaging for democracy. And we do see it, as I said, filtering into like so many other walks of life, like retail workers, like healthcare workers, people having to say really clearly abuse of our staff will not be tolerated. And we shouldn't really be in a society where that even needs to be said. So there's something wrong there with the general sense of society, with crime, with how we all interact with each other. It's in politics, but it's everywhere, and we all need to take that quite seriously to address it. Sorry, thanks for the question.
Thank you. Okay. Sir.
All to do with housing. I moved away to England, and then I came back from Northampton. Was it September the 6th, and was made homeless because my family went into a care home. So I got a flat through the homeless shelter, and it's through River Clyde Homes. Now, I've got problems with that flat. I've had rats in the cavity walls. I've had pest control out about 8 times. I've got dampness in the property. They say it's not, it's condensation. I bought 2 dehumidifiers and to try and it gathers water. Now I had River Clyde Homes out again. Was it yesterday or the day before? It's saying because I'm in a scatter flat and I'm leaving the property this year because my father-in-law passed away. The wife is going to receive a sum of money, and we're going to be buying a house. So I'll be fortunate to get out of it. But River Clyde Homes is not looking after the properties. You're saying for them to build more properties. Why build more properties when they can't even look after the properties that they've got? Now, the thing is, in Port Glasgow, there's been flats knocked down from Kelburn right up to Park Hill, Bevel Street. I live at the back of Finnieston Street. And there's about 6 high-rise flats knocked down. There's less housing in Inverclyde. Inverclyde, Greenock Town Centre, is the most deprived town in the whole of Scotland. And if anybody doesn't believe me, do a Google search on it, because it'll come up. Because this is going towards the SNP. You've been in power for 19 years. What have you done? You've deprived the town. We had shipyards here. Scott Lithgow's. How many people did it employ? Look at Ferguson's. What about the warships? We really got enough warships to protect our country. We had to borrow a warship. Because SNP have been in power.
Right. Do you have a specific question, sir?
Yeah, it's all to do with housing. Okay. So basically, Scotland is run down. It's broken.
Discuss.
So there's a few points that you raised, sir. So first of all, just on housing. Obviously, River Clyde Homes came into being in 2007 through the housing stock transfer. Formerly it was with Inverclyde Council. One of the issues that comes up in my office on a regular basis, daily, are issues regarding housing and the management of housing. So my office, my staff and I, we have that daily engagement with River Clyde Homes and also with other housing associations as well. But River Clyde Homes being the biggest one, that's the one that we're going to obviously have more issues with. Now, Francesca's on the board of River Clyde Homes, so some of the points about RCH, I think Francesca might be able to answer. On your point regarding shipbuilding, my party has been in power for 19 years. The shipyards went when I was a boy. Long before the SNP it came into power in the Scottish Parliament. Quite honestly, regarding Ferguson's, my father worked in Ferguson's. That was his last place I worked before he passed away. And that yard, our yard, is a personal issue for me. It's not just about something in the constituency, not just about something in the town in which I grew up in. It's a personal issue for me. And the fact that our community was decimated by the Conservative Party, Margaret Thatcher's Conservative Party. Shipyards, heavy engineering and supply industries went. The one that stayed, obviously, clearly was Ferguson's, and we get ship repair, obviously, at Garville. But Ferguson's managed to stay on. 2014, it was shut. My party stepped in to get someone to come in to take that yard on. Sadly, the yard was going to be shut again, and my party had to step in to keep that yard going and nationalised it. I consistently said this. I don't have a principled position on whether it should be nationalised or go back into the private sector. I'm relaxed about that. But the thing is, I look at when that yard was in the private sector, where was the investment? That our workers were still using kit going back to the 1940s. That is appalling. That was the private sector. The investment that's going into the yard now is because of the public sector, it's because of the SNP government to save the yard, save the jobs and create a future. So there's now 4 vessels for the next 5 years, and it's up to the management to get their finger out and make sure that operates the way it actually can do.
Thanks, Stuart. Okay. Stuart messaged you about River Clyde Homes. Do you want to say something about that, Francesca?
Yeah, listen, thanks for your question. Thanks for sharing with everybody here. But just to hear me out in my response, and she asked a question, that would be great, and I think really appreciated. I'm so pleased that you raised that with everybody here, because that takes a lot, and that's horrific that that's the conditions that you're living in. So yeah. So listen, just to let me answer that, and we can even catch up after this and talk more about it then, because I think that would be important as well. As Stuart mentioned, I'm a councillor and a council appointee to the board of River Clyde Homes. The reason that I did that was exactly to do with your question, because it's we all know that, like, hopefully everybody here is going home to somewhere that is wind and watertight, and I know that you're saying that isn't happening for you, and we know how important that is. So instead of just kind of hearing that from my constituents and hearing how much they were challenged by their housing and not doing what I could within my locus about that, I decided, after another councillor had resigned and there was a vacancy on that board, to take it up for a few reasons, so that I could learn as much as I could about social housing in Inverclyde, so that I could learn from the people that work there, and that I could amplify and raise the voices of customers and tenants, so that I could make your case in the room rather than sitting outside the room and saying there's a problem, there's not anything that I'm going to do about it. So that's actually why I did that. You're absolutely right about some of the issues that Inverclyde faces about housing and homelessness. I was really proud to be part. People have been working on this for a lot longer than I've been elected, but the homelessness centre is almost decommissioned. And that's right, because, and I think, it was misrepresented at points, but that is right. That wasn't a dignified, respectful approach for people presenting as homeless. That wasn't actually what they needed from a human rights perspective. There was something better that we could do for people who needed that. As a Scottish Labour government, we're going to look really, really carefully at this. We're going to build more homes. We're going to unlock a housing revolution. We're going to widen the eligibility for energy efficiency grants so that older houses can upgrade their homes. And we're going to boost uptake of the warm home discount. But I appreciate that isn't actually anything that's making a difference to you now tonight, when we're all starting to think about heading home and you're going somewhere that isn't right for anybody to be in. So I'm so sorry to hear that, and I would really appreciate if you gave us the opportunity to talk to you about that more.
Yep. Francesca offered to speak to you after about that, if that's something you'd be interested in. So thank you very much for that, and thank you for that, Francesca. So, Ted, have you got your hand? Yes, of course you can.
Well, one of the things we've seen coming up to an election, what has the SNP view been? Quick, let's give out a set of freebies to get the votes. We've just heard that all 18-year-olds will get a £200 gift voucher. Yeah, but what I'm going to say is that's going to cost 10 million. That could be put into housing repairs where it's really needed. The same with the children first year getting a £130 backpack. That could have been done for about £40 and the money could have gone where the Scottish electorate need it.
Thank you, Ted. Okay, I'm going to have a question from the back, if that's okay. Gentleman in the back. Yes, sir.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Fleming. I'm an immigrant in this place. First of all, I want to say that Inverclyde is a proud community that welcomes immigrants, diversity, and multiculturalism. I want to ask how the candidate, particularly the Reform candidate, there has been issues about immigration at the national level and everywhere. The politics of hate and echoes and noises of hate against immigrants have all been around. I want to put it to you. What is your view and what will you do differently concerning this? Particularly immigrants are here who are working legally, who are contributing to the economy of this place, and who have found this place as their home because you have welcomed us. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, and it was asked to you specifically, but if you could answer first. Thank you.
Of course, thank you. Well, first of all, thank you for the question, because it's a really important one. And what I want to dispel this evening in anybody here who thinks that the party, Reform Party, is racist, I'm going to explain to you. Well, if you give me the opportunity, and the respect, please, I'll explain, all right? Reform are fully supportive of anybody who comes here legally, gets a job, makes a contribution, integrates, just like this man up here. So we welcome you. You're very welcome. What the media try to propose is that we're anti-immigration. That's not true. My supporters don't think that. Could I just please can I answer the question?
Folks, Moira's speaking, please, if we could do her the courtesy of a response, please.
We are supporters of people who come here legally, who work, get involved in the community, pay their taxes, do all the things everybody else does. What we don't want are people, we want some measure of people coming in that we don't know who they are, we don't know where they come from, we don't know whether they've got criminal records, and they're being paid by the government to stay in hotels. Now, let me ask you this question, because it's about fairness. Okay, we have people, if you go up to Glasgow, go to Buchanan Street, Sauchiehall Street, Argyll Street, anywhere, you'll see people sitting, begging with cards saying, you know, ex-serviceman, veteran, please give what you can. Reform's position is quite simple. Look after your own people first. And all this division that we're talking about, all this division that you're seeing and hearing about, is not helped by the fact that the government are putting other people in front of local people. That's causing division. And I'll give you an example. I'm about to do that, yeah. So I'm going to say to you this, look, if you're standing in Starbucks waiting for a cup of coffee, or some coffee shop, the one that's just across the street, and somebody comes in, you're standing in the queue waiting your turn to get your coffee, pay your money, and somebody just barges in and just goes in front of you. The natural reaction is, well, hang on a minute, why are you jumping the queue? Right? Oh, you wouldn't bother? I don't think so. So human nature is that we form an orderly queue, we wait our turn, we form an orderly queue, we wait our turn, and we respect other people in the queue. What's happening, and what's causing, I think, a lot of discontent with people, is that people that have got no connection with Scotland are coming and jumping the queue for housing. You're struggling to get a doctor's appointment. Well, it may be because other people are now in the same queue that you're in for the doctor. So all we're saying is, please come. You're very welcome if you come here legally. You're very welcome if you come here and you work. Very welcome to come and pay your taxes and integrate with the communities. All the things that this young man over here has talked about. We welcome that. But we're questioning the sense of just allowing an open season for anybody who wants to come here from France. And people bandy about words that they don't actually really understand, I think. An asylum seeker is somebody seeking asylum from a war-torn country. France doesn't even go there. It's not a war-torn country. So refugees are people who can apply to come here legally. That's fine. But what we can't really assimilate into our communities are hundreds of people coming in, and we don't know who they are, where they're from, what diseases they have, for example. And, oh yeah,
Fred,
no, just let me, I'm about to give you
if we can, Moira, I'm very conscious. I'm very
just
conscious.
one example?
Yeah, I'm very conscious. I want to let other people
okay,
respond
can I just
as well.
give one
Yep,
example?
One bit, please be quick.
There's a doctor that I know, and he's told me that there's a rise in HIV cases. Okay? And tuberculosis. That's what he's told me.
Right, excuse me, folks, I'm going to allow the panel, excuse me, sir, I'm going to allow the panel, if anyone else is wishing to respond before I take any comments on the floor. Thank you, Francesca.
Femi, thanks so much for your question, and I'm sure you'll feel a warm welcome to Inverclyde from many people in this room, and you've hopefully felt it, as you said in your question. We were asked by the Greenock Telegraph as candidates last week to talk about immigration, and I didn't get the chance in my contribution to talk as much as I wanted to about my grandfather, Joseph Kuczynska, that I didn't have the privilege of meeting, and how he came to Inverclyde as an immigrant after World War II and serving in that war. Joseph started a business here in Inverclyde, but I think from what I know through family history, he was a better carpenter than he was a businessman. My mum's nodding back there. So when there was a shortage in the employment sector in Inverclyde of technical teachers, he retrained and became a teacher, similar to some of the shortages that we have in sectors at the moment in Scotland. And then he became one of the first adopters of the Duke of Edinburgh Award Scheme. That's a really huge part of Inverclyde now, and supports young people in our community to learn new skills and really contribute to our local area. I think it's safe to say that immigrants or people who are new to Scotland have contributed greatly to Inverclyde's culture and economy. I think that that Femi mentioned, Reform have failed to condemn some of the heinous statements made from some of their candidates standing in this election here in Scotland, and that's a concern for us all. We do need to look at safe, legal routes that are respectful to immigrants and to make it fair and controlled. and Inverclyde does suffer from depopulation as well, but that's a really key point that Femi made himself in the question about safe legal routes. So thanks very much for bringing that to our attention tonight.
Thank you. And Stuart, you had your hand raised.
Thank you. One of the things I did in the past, which had a huge impact upon me, was to visit Auschwitz when I was travelling around Europe some years ago. And I studied in Germany, as I touched upon earlier. So when I was in Germany, obviously I had quite a bit of discussion about what happened in the 1930s. Going to Auschwitz, it just stayed with me, and it will stay with me until the day I die, with regards to how inhuman some people can be towards others. Now, I thought the comments this week from Sir Tom Devine, and I've got them here somewhere. Sir Tom Devine, because of the Reform Manifesto in Wales, Sir Tom Devine stated this. Some might argue that superficially, at least, there is some similarity between those dark days and the reported pledge in the Reform Party in Wales to interfere with the independence of museums in the highly sensitive matter of how history, and especially national history, is represented in them. The fact that there are people who are commenting and suggesting that some of the comments and some of the language that came from Reform are in a way echoing the 1930s is horrific, in my opinion. Absolutely horrific. Inverclyde is built on immigration. Inverclyde is built on emigration. Immigration and emigration are normal. They are. Please, sir, let me finish. No, let me finish. Let me finish. Let me finish. Immigration and emigration are normal. That's what our community has been built upon. And I welcome people coming into our community. Now, I actually wrote to Inverclyde Council because I knew this was going to be an issue throughout this election campaign. Here we go. So I wrote to the Chief Executive. And this is the question. There's a few questions, but this one in particular. How many occasions have Inverclyde Council and partners asked for an asylum seeker to be removed? The answer is none. None. Because Inverclyde is a welcoming community, and I am delighted about that. And that there have been the amount of support that actually has been given to asylum seekers in our community is something I very much welcome, and I think it's something that we should all be proud of, because the individuals had no say in terms of where they were going to be allocated to. And this takes it back to the fundamental problem with the asylum seeker system. The asylum system is broken. It has been broken for years. And the problem, with all due respect, Moira, the problem regarding the housing aspect is because the asylum process has been broken, and then when the government, the UK government in 2022 eventually got around to actually doing something with it, they did it at such a pace, going from nothing to such a pace, it then put so many more people out of the system. So it then put more pressure upon housing. That's not the fault. I know this has been bandied around in terms of trying to blame the SNP government and blame Glasgow City Council. That's not their fault. That's the fault of a system that's been absolutely broken by the UK government, consistent UK governments. So immigration is something that I warmly welcome. In terms of the folk who are coming in through the asylum process, they've got no choice as to where they've been sent. And some of them actually have been to 2 or 3 different hotels. Now, I would argue it's not a humane way to actually deal with people either. It just isn't. But there have been issues that have taken place in other parts of Scotland, also down south as well, with regards to the asylum hotels. The fact there's been very little actually took place here. And the fact that no asylum seeker, the council and partners have not asked for anyone to be removed is something that I absolutely warmly welcome.
Thank you, Stuart. And Ted, you wanted to say something.
The UK has benefited from immigration since going back to the Windrush project, and it will always require immigration. But what we do need, or what we are seeing now, is unchecked and unlimited illegal immigration coming in. We do need them, but what we do need is that the checks for bringing people in. And I, in an HR role that I've played for 40 years, have brought in quite a number of immigrants to the country. But it has been done through the official legal channels. What we need is to continue that. We need to make sure that people, particularly illegal people arriving, are checked out outside of the country and then brought in legally with the correct papers. We will always need immigration, but it needs to be checked and monitored.
Thank you. Moira, yeah, quickly. Yeah.
Sorry, I just want to make one point, and that's this. I deal with applications for people to come into the country through the visa system that's identified by the Home Office. That needs to change because the hurdles to come in here legally are pretty significant. You have to actually provide evidence of who you are. You have to provide evidence of what you can do. You have to be able to get yourself onto a skilled workers number. You've got to provide evidence that you've qualified to do that job, evidence that you've worked elsewhere. The employer has to say that they've tried to fill that post in the UK and in Scotland, but failed. And then the person who wants to come in legally has to demonstrate to the Home Office that they have enough money to come here and support themselves for a few years. And that includes all their family as well. So I think we should be looking at the UK situation for legal immigration and making it a much more simple, less expensive, streamlined system. Because we do need people to come here from abroad because we have a skills shortage here ourselves. So that's the way I would see it going forward. Don't put hurdles in people's way to come here legally. And don't put them off because they can't afford it. They may have the skills that we need. So that needs to have a root and branch change by the UK government to properly streamline legal immigration so there's no need for people to come across from France in a boat. Thank you.
Right, sir, I'm conscious it's 9:30, and so this is going to be the last question of the night. There you are, sir.
As we've seen recently, if there's a shortage in production, costs go up. If there's overproduction, costs go down. Do you think it's fair that Scotland, with massive overproduction of energy, cannot legislate to benefit from what should be cheaper electricity? This would benefit each of us here tonight, local businesses and our national economy, and give us the money to deal with a lot of the issues that you're all moaning about tonight.
Thank you. Are you going first, Francesca?
Thanks very much for that question. It's nice to see you here in the flesh because I know you're a keyboard warrior yourself, constantly typing away little comments online. And Chair, can we just, before we finish, since this is the last question tonight, a round of applause for our excellent chair. Thank you. Although I think one of the candidates on the panel did get a second chance at answering one question there, so we'll let that go tonight. So I think the question was really about the cost of living crisis, essentially, and about energy. So I think you're absolutely right that...
What was it? Energy only, Francesca.
So it was about energy. So it was about energy only. I thought it was really on the wider issue of the cost of living. I wouldn't characterise myself as moaning on the panel here tonight. I think we've all been contributing and answering people's questions. So a couple of things that we would really want to do when it comes to energy specifically. I mentioned earlier on that we'd widen eligibility for energy efficiency grants so that 3,000 older households can upgrade their homes, and we'd also boost uptake of the warm home discount. We've already come out front and centre as well and said that if international instability continues after the election on the 7th of May, then a government led by Anas Sarwar would also deliver £100 million of emergency support in its first 100 days, including crisis loans for energy-intensive businesses to protect jobs, and that would include bulk buying fuel to help drive down prices at the pumps, emergency grants or interest-free loans for struggling households, and acting with supermarkets to cut the cost of staple items, and a national income maximisation drive so that families do not miss out on support that they're entitled to. What we wouldn't do is start a cynical argument with Westminster just so that it could create some sort of dividing line after the SNP been in power for 19 years.
Sorry, sir. Do you feel the question's been answered? No. So right. Sorry, someone raised their voice. So, do you think it's fair that Scotland can't legislate to get cheaper electricity? That's the question. Right.
I think in the interest of the audience's time, though, and sitting so long, I won't come back in for a second time like another panelist.
Right, okay. Does anybody else wish to contribute? Stuart?
Absolutely, it's completely unfair. The fact that Scotland has been such an energy-rich country, 60s and 70s with oil and gas, and now with renewables, and in 60s and 70s, a lot of that money ended up going to pay for the eradication of shipbuilding, coal, steel, UK-wide, as compared to actually being invested into the wider UK at that particular point. But the fact we've got a second chance at this, we've got a second chance with renewables, but we do not have the legislative powers to actually do what we need to do. The fact that there are people in our community living in fuel poverty is abhorrent. The fact that there are people who are living across Scotland in fuel poverty is abhorrent. We're in a country that generates so much energy. So we need to have the powers over energy. We need to have the powers of independence, quite frankly. And I know that's not welcome by some, but it is by others. If Scotland were an independent country, we can make these changes. We can actually make this change in terms of energy. So we can actually get the benefit of energy, get the benefit of the renewables. Because the tax has got to be paid somewhere, and I would much rather the tax was paid into Edinburgh, to the Scottish Parliament, so that can then be reinvested back into Scotland to actually improve Scotland's output.
Ted, yeah?
As I mentioned earlier, 5 years ago the SNP was saying it's our oil. Right now we've got the SNP and Labour stopping drilling in the North Sea. Yes, we want to get to renewables, but it's going to take time. In the intervening time, we need to start drilling again and get oil at a cheaper price than we're currently paying to get it brought in from other countries, until such times as we can develop the renewables and take over. But it's going to take some time. Cutting it off right now is cutting off our nose to spite our face and import oil at a far greater cost.
Thank you, Ted. So, friends, I am aware that people have still got questions. So, I'm sure our candidates are not going to run out the door. You're not running out the door, are you? Good. If anyone would like to have an opportunity to come and speak at the end, you'd be very welcome, but I'm conscious that people are wanting to get home. Can I thank each and every one of you, first and foremost, for being here, for asking your questions, and for being such a wonderful audience tonight. Can we put our hands together for our candidates, please? And also, another very special bunch. Can we thank those who served the tea and coffee at the beginning? Thank you to each and every one of you for being here and online. Please have a safe journey home. And please, if you've got any questions, please do come speak to the candidates at the end. Best wishes and safe journey. Thank you.